you build a home or a hotel, a traditional farm or a server farm? Introducing Hacienda Castilla. St. Matthew's Assurance presents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Over 800 square miles of pristine, uninhabited coastal property in central Chile, ready for industrial, business, and residential development. Hacienda Castilla features almost unlimited open spaces and some of the most beautiful beaches in South America. With parcels ranging from 20 acres to over 200 acres, Hacienda Castilla will be adjacent to Copia Port A, the deepest natural port in all of South America. Experience future-forward development limited only by your imagination. What will you create at Hacienda Castilla? Become part of something completely new. For more, visit haciendacastilla.net today.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a beautiful Monday here in Southern California. Todd, how is it in the Bahamas?
It's Monday.
Oh, nice.
And it's magnificent out, and you and I are inside working, so something's got to change.
So
brother.
wrong, so wrong.
It is wrong, but I'm happy to be here. I always enjoy our time together. That and being able to share stuff with the audience, interesting things. Today is going to be a wild ride, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, so thank you for that. What else you got?
Hey, did you see that CBS completely invented history and claimed that freedom of speech was why the World War II genocides happened in Germany?
Oh, is that how
yes.
that worked?
Yes, I just did a story about it. It's amazing. It's hilarious. And it was all based off of a reference to J.D. Vance's speech in Munich this week.
Yes,
this week.
I saw it. It was fabulous. He made the EC commissioner cry.
When your military leaders cry because your words hurt their feeling, you need better military leaders.
We need, yes. And so apparently that's happening. I don't know if you saw this one, but all the properties for sale in Washington, D.C. on Zillow, they are running. They're literally running for the hills. And I don't think they're going to escape. There is no escape. These guys made international criminal law a thing. So I'd be interested to see where they think they're going to run to. Antarctica?
Yeah, well, I think Europe is probably going to open their arms up to them.
That won't work for long because, you know, people from around the entire planet have had it. The gig is up, right? That we now understand vis-a-vis USAID and what Doge is doing. It's all coming out, John. They cannot put the genie back in the bottle. And above all, I'm extraordinarily excited about Mr. Trump effectively stopping the OECD. People don't know the Organization for Economic and Cooperative Development is the one world government. We are the last domino to fall, and yet the domino still stands. So God bless them for that.
Well, what's on the monologue for today?
Yeah, so I was going to go through some of the memes, and we can always add those in at some point, but I'm kind of anxious to get to the meat of it. It's really, the monologue is as much about helping people understand where it is we're at and the fact that we're not through this yet. The fire is still all around us. The digital ID and all that stuff is still on the way. But, you know, it is through our collective will and force that we stop the poison shots. They are falling apart everywhere. We can stop digital ID and the takeover of AI as well. We're going to have to do it. It takes everybody. It takes all of us to do it. So watch, learn, listen, and share, please.
Take it away, Todd.
All right, brother. So with that said, there's a few pieces coming up that John is going to play for you. And I think it's worth understanding when you see these players, these Ellison, for example, Mr. Oracle, right? We call them globalists, but they're worse than that. They're like criminal evil geniuses because they have fabricated a structure around us, an invisible prison, an electronic one. This guy is right at the front of it. He's been in the background. Now he's moving to the forefront to tell us how and why it is that we need to be slaves to AI. Listen to the hubris of this guy. Along with another globalist, Tony Blair, right, who used to be the head of the United Kingdom as prime minister. He's got some power. he came here, funny enough, to endorse FTX that then blew up. Why? Because they were laundering money for the Democratic National Committee. Anyway, let's listen to this guy.
I think one of the most important things is not to put the digital infrastructure in place and make sure it is secure. And often it needs to be sovereign. So I think countries are very uncomfortable with keeping their data in other countries' data centers. So I think part of our essential infrastructure, just like airports obviously need to be in our country, or they're not terribly useful. Ports need.
I'm not sure what happened there, John.
To be on our country and they're not terribly useful. Data centers, because of the privacy requirements around the data, need to be in our countries or they're not terribly useful. They need to be in our countries, but they also need to be secure. And there are new technologies right now. This is the last year you will ever log on to an Oracle system with a password. Next, by the middle of this year, well, how do I mean, I'm quite certain you are Tony Blair. And so how do I know? Well, I look at you, I hear your voice, I listen to the kind of questions you ask. I'm pretty sure you're not, you're not synthetically created in having this conversation. The security system, we have biometric logins. The computer record.
Yeah. Biometric logins, digital ID. How is he so sure that Tony Blair is real? Because he's looking at him. But when he says this has to be a country thing, that is just a line to fool you. Digital ID would be a part of the OECD's master matrix. It's an information matrix that's already in existence, has been since 2016. It tracks every last asset on this planet back to every last living, breathing person. So when they say they're going to save $1 trillion a year, what they really mean is that they're going to steal from you $1 trillion a year, because they're going to track everything back to your digital persona. Listen to this guy talk about it.
An article that has 1,000 words, technically all 1,000 words could have made it onto X somehow. And effectively, now you have this remarkable repository. And I wonder how you think about that again, and how you think the creative community and those who were the original IP owners should think about that.
I don't know, except to say that by the time these lawsuits are decided, we'll have digital God. So ask digital God at that point. These lawsuits won't be decided before on a time frame that is relevant.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think we live, there's that, I don't know if it's actually a real Chinese saying or not, but may you live in interesting times.
Right.
Is apparently not a good thing. But I would prefer to, personally, I would prefer to live in interesting times. And we live in the most interesting of times. I think, for a while there, I was really getting demotivated and losing sleep over the threat of AI danger. And then I finally became fatalistic about it and said, well, even if I knew annihilation was certain, would I choose to be alive at that time or not? And I said I probably would choose to be alive at that time because it's the most interesting thing, even if there's nothing I could do about it.
Wow. Even as a digital god. And this is the guy behind it, along with his pal Ellison and many others, Gates included, which is why they were sticking nanobots into people's arms. Genetically modified organisms, according to Mr. Gates. We just shoot them right in little kids' veins, says he. And we missed one of those clips, John. It was about implementing the ID verification. I don't know how that one went out of order, but whatever the case, the key to this is smart dust, right? That's the same thing as the nanobot. Smart dust has been around for about 20 years. They have been crop dusting us with it. It's in the NASA Langley research papers of future of fifth generation warfare in 2025. What year is it now? And they brag about the technology being able to be sprayed upon us, and then these little things drill through our lungs into our bloodstreams, and then they have the ability to not only report on what's going on, They're autonomous and programmable, and they get to program us. They actually go through the blood-brain barrier. So when he talks about a digital God, it's about hooking these stupid things into this great giant information sharing matrix that the OECD et al. Have already built. And they are now integrating you into it. Yeah, go ahead and play that one. I think it's salient, John.
How much money do you calculate is wasted due to waste, fraud, and abuse in the entitlement programs each year?
Yeah, my number right now between federal, state, and local government is you can save $1 trillion a year by simply putting in front-end identity verification, eliminating self-certification, and monitoring the back end of the programs that are providing the benefits. Those three things.
Yeah, I don't want to be anybody's program. I don't receive any benefits from the government. I don't want your freaking benefits. I am not going to be your slave. I am not going to be digitally ID'd, and I'm not going to have my consciousness uploaded into some giant computer. Why? Because we said no. And through our collective efforts, we were able to stop the mass vaccination program, which was really nothing more than a mass deployment of your nanobots into our bodies. It ain't going to happen. The genie is out of the bottle. We know, and better yet, we now have champions. And I confess to you, Mr. Trump, that I was not aware. You did a great job and you fooled me. I was concerned that you were one of the bad guys. But then Mr. Kennedy says it himself. He wanted to do something, and through his law firm, Children's Health Defense, he has done noble litigation to try and slow this juggernaut down. I did see in front of Congress, he says, oh, yeah, well, I'm pro-vax. I think that was simply to get into place. And now he says, I prayed to God for a solution, and God sent me President Trump. And what do we see? The first order of business Mr. Trump did was he stopped the OECD. Again, that is the one world government. That is the legal framework that was set up to imprison all of us in this digital prison, this digital nightmare. So God bless you, President Trump. God bless you, Mr. Kennedy. I understand we're not out of the fire yet, but yet all of this is coming out, and you cannot govern without the consent of the governed. And so now we see Mr. Kennedy, God bless you again, cuts 1,300 jobs from the CDC. Well, who are those guys? They're the ones that told us things were safe and effective. They're the ones that actually had the results from the test in the military did. C459, 1001, look it up for yourself, 1,291 new diseases the victims of that test subject went home with. And now Mr. Kennedy is getting to the meat of the matter, which is that our regulatory bodies, the FDA and the CDC, have been co-opted by Big Pharma, by those who seek our destruction, and he's taken it to task. 1,300 CDC gone, FDA, you're right behind it. And now we see Mr. Trump already gets rid of 400 Department of Homeland Security employees. More are on the way. These cuts are the ringing bell, the signal of our freedom, ladies and gentlemen. And when you include that with 15,000 employees, Mr. Trump has already identified in the IRS to purge, that slavery is going to become a thing of the past, ladies and gentlemen. I think we are actually on the way to a transformation of our economy from a Soviet model debt economy to something different, an equity model economy. There are a few examples of that. We've talked about it before. In essence, by virtue of the opportunities and the resources we have being exploited by Americans in America, we get to participate in the upside. That's what Mr. Trump is promising, and he's keeping the other people out. Why do we form countries in the first place? We stick up barriers, we call them borders, and we defend them. And then we jointly exploit those resources. That's called sovereignty. That's what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. Sovereignty and self-determination. Our culture, the American culture, will thrive if we are unburdened by debt slavery, if we're unburdened by regulation, if we don't have to worry how it is we're going to meet our rent or car payment or insurance premium at the end of the month. Humanity's brains can go wild, right? We can figure it all out. What we need is to be unbridled. Today, we have Joel Freeman with us, and he is an unbridled thinker. He's a historian, a PhD, and he is into Black history, amongst other things. But what it really captured my mind and my imagination is what it is you're talking about, Joel. as it relates to ancient Egyptian, North African knowledge and philosophy. And I can't wait to hear it. You are the author of, I'm sorry, what is the name of the book? And welcome, by the way, to TBT. What is the book name?
It's called Black History 365.
That's the one, but you've got another one too, don't you?
Oh, yes. Well, a few. I've written about 20 books that are in 28 languages. So which one? This one right here? Jack Johnson Speaks.
That's the one. That's the one I was thinking of. But look, we're here to hear things coming out of your brain. I am particularly interested in the North African philosophy, the history, ancient technology and way of thinking. So tell us a little bit about yourself and then how you got here and where we're going.
Oh, thank you so much, Todd. And John, my wife and I, we live in Maryland here. And I came originally from Alberta, Canada. I left home when I was 17. I became a long-haired hippie, a dope-smoking fool. I traveled, I hitchhiked probably 5,000-6,000 miles in this thumb right here, all around North America. And I did that for, recently I just figured it out, it was about 21 months where I was just out and about. Had a blast.
Wow.
The only, the only thing that troubled me was the pain it brought to my parents, especially my mother. But we were able to patch things up. And then I had a conversion experience in September 10th, 1972, that just turned my whole life around. And little did I realize that 7 years later, I would become one of the first chaplains in the history of the NBA with the Washington Bullets, the Wizards, with Wes Unseld and Kevin Porter and Mitch Kupchak and Kevin Greavy and Bobby Dandridge and all those guys. Phil Chenier. And so that did that for 20 seasons. But during that time, what happened is, of course, I had to deal with a lot of juvenile thinking, juvenile behavior, and all that kind of stuff in those 7 years to work at that level. I had no mentor. The main thing I knew is that I needed to just love these guys unconditionally and to keep things confidential so that they didn't have to worry about, hey, next Tuesday on the sports cover, the sports section, the chaplain tells all. And so there's some stuff I will go to my grave. I've even told my wife things that I know that I kept quiet all these years and will continue to. But during that time, of course, working with a lot of players, their position in life attracts a lot of insincere people. The bulk of the players I was working with are of African descent. So, and a lot of players, they're just looking at me like, I'm supposed to spill my guts to that guy? Are you kidding me?
The white guy.
I look 15, at 25 years of age, I look 15, 16 years of age. And so what happened is that I began to study, and it began right around 1980, where I began to study in earnest about Black history. And then it was all pre-digital era, so I would go to the local library. I'd get videos out, Eyes on the Prize Part 1, Eyes on the Prize Part 2, the 8-part series by Basil Davidson on Africa, Voyage of Discovery, and all these different things, reading books. And then I bumped into Ivan Van Sertima, who was a professor at Rutgers, and he passed away in 2009. But somehow, I don't know how, I got his home phone number. I call him up and I say, Ivan, you don't know me. I barely know you, but I really want to get to know you, and I would hope you want to get to know me. That's how I opened it up. And we talked for 45 minutes. He got my home address. I didn't think anything of it, gave it to him. About 3 weeks later, I get this big box of books. He had written about 30 volumes of literature.
Wow.
They came before Columbus, Egypt Revisited, his books on the Moors, African presence in Asia, the Olmec, all kinds of different civilizations. And so what happened is I began to read. And when I really read an author, I will talk back to them. I'll have a green pen or a red pen or whatever, and I'll just say, well, that was a good point, or I don't understand where you're going with this, or three chapters later, oh, now I know why you said that in that chapter. And so I called him up and I said, I have people in my life that are kind of like cultural guides, but I have no one in my life that is like a historical guide. And would you become that to me? and he consented. We had some incredible conversations, hours long sometimes, and he allowed me to talk about or ask any questions that were ricocheting around my little pea brain up here. And what happened is we formed this tremendous friendship, and then fast forward to about 6.5 years ago, Dr. Walter Milton called me. He's the co-author. We co-authored this together, Walter and Joel. And the subtitle is An Inclusive Account of American History. And so what happened is that he said, "Hey, Joel, how would you like to do a Black history curriculum, K through 12? And I told him later, you had me at hello. So what happened is we started, researching, writing, editing, rinse and repeat. It was like Groundhog Day every day. It was crazy for 2.5 years. Just think about where you were and what you were doing 2.5 years ago. And no guarantees, no school systems out there saying, hey, if you write it, we'll buy it. Yep. And Walter and I, we completely, it was all based on our word to each other. There's no money changing hands. There's nothing in writing. We just did it for 2.5 years. Wow. And what emerged is this book that weighs 5.5 pounds. It's about 3 inches thick, 1,248 pages. It has over 1,500 QR codes throughout, over 500 images. This is like a museum in a book. Yeah. And a lot of these images came from my collection that I have, over 3,000 documents and artifacts. The oldest piece dates back to 1553. And I've done 2 exhibits, United Nations. We had about 1 million people show up, 3 at the White House, 2 at the Clinton Presidential Library, a bunch, all throughout the alphabet soup of DC. I've done a lot of events with the collection, Secret Service, FBI, NIH, and so on. And so 1/5 of the images are from my collection, images people have never seen in this context, and some have never seen at all. And so what we decided to do, we started wrestling with some very difficult topics, like Uncle Tom, 3/5 of a human being. Sure. Do we tear the statues down? Can a white person ever fully understand the Black experience in America? Black people in the deadly dance with both American political party machines, scientific racism, manifest destiny, doctrine of discovery, all these different topics that people butt heads on. Yes. And the way we designed it is, if you can imagine, my thumb is like, it's a metaphor for uncomfortability. Those are the topics that we covered. We ran toward them. We crawled toward them. We walked toward them. And we didn't shy away from anything. And then the other 4 fingers become the metaphor for how we connect with uncomfortability. Because we have to develop a schema, a process. Because the worst thing a teacher could do is say, okay, students, today we're going to discuss and have a debate about should we tear the statues down, or reparations, or something like that. That creates more division. So we prepare the students and parents and faculty and administrators. First, we invite everyone to become a critical thinker. Beautiful. And how we do that is, wherever there is a binary choice, let's say, should we tear the statues down? Well, here's one on a case study of slave ships. We have this funky looking elephant, which is kind of like warning people, this is going to be a hot topic. This is going to be an elephant in the room that we're going to deal with. Smart. And we have 52 of them in the book. And then so what we do is, when there's a binary choice, we have 5 QR codes, let's say, that give the pro, we're for reparations. We then have 5 more that are against reparations. And then the students, the first class, it's not even about Black history. The students are dealing with how they're going to do the what. And so they create a code of conduct, rules of engagement made up of we will not statements. And then what happens is the second class, in my collection, I have a talking stick. I mean, I should have brought it here.
I know what a talking stick is. I got that. It's a Native American thing. Yep.
Well, this is from the Chukwe tribe of Angola. And from the mid-1850s, mid-1800s. Wow. It's about 15 inches long, and has an image of a chief carved into it playing a thumb piano, which one person told me is that the music was transcendent, that he was connecting with all generations and all occupations and everybody in the whole tribal system. So what would happen is they'd hand the stick to someone in the tribal council, the king or the chieftain. Whoever held the stick had the authority to speak. Everyone else had the authority to listen. And so the students then create their own talking stick. And it's incredible what they come up with.
That is really beautiful.
They'll attach a button to remind them to be open with each other, a feather to have wings to get to their point. And then what happens is that now they're ready for the good, the bad, the ugly of the last 4 centuries, the issues that have vexed our country for centuries. And so then the next point is then we invite them to become compassionate listeners. 2 ears, 1 mouth, there's a parable there somewhere. And to learn what active listening is all about, and empathy, and to encourage each other through listening, through body language and everything else. The next point is that we invite everyone, because you can't force anyone to do anything, to become a fact-based, respectful communicator. So that we talk about tone,
fact-based.
tact,
Yep.
We talk about voice inflection. We talk about decibel level, and all these types of things, so that so it's more about healing than about divisiveness. And then finally, based upon the first 3 that are connecting with uncomfortability, is to become an action-oriented solutionist. So, we have all kinds of ideas, solutions about even taking back the hair care and beauty industry from Asians who control about 90% of it, and how to do it without firing 1 shot. We have all kinds of things, solutional ideas that we embed into the whole textbook. This is very revolutionary stuff.
No, please don't. No, I'm fascinated by this. There's just so much information in the, 10 minutes that you shared with us. I mean, it's really important. And you are self-described as Confessions of a Budding Truth Centrist. It strikes me that everything you just talked about is based upon the truth. And that's really what our mission has been for the last 5 years, is sharing the cold, hard truth. And what we came to find, Joel, is that the vast majority of people on this planet are not prepared to confront the truth. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, they don't want it. We've been given a narrative. We've been given a worldview. We've been shaped by it and herded down a path of deception. At the end of the day, everything we think we know is based on a lie. So you're going back into history and you're digging out the facts, you're sharing them and forcing people to confront those. And I find that very fascinating and compelling. Part of that story I want to understand is ancient philosophy, ancient knowledge is buried, right? The Smithsonian goes around and it buries evidence of giants or collects the evidence and disposes of it or hides it. And that's anecdotal, but it's happened for centuries now. So what did you get from Africa and your studies, the Egyptians or other cultures, Olmec and South America? What was that wisdom that really turned your brain on?
Well, I think that, in the long and short of it is that it's just, I was learning a lot of things I'd never been taught in school. Sure. And I find that when, in fact, I have a whole website called truthcentrism.com.
Good. We'll put that up.
One of my things is it's a time management tool. Every once in a while, I take an inventory of where my counsel's in demand. I'll either write a book about it, create a website about it, or something, so that when people call me, I can talk politely for about 120 seconds and say, I got a book on that topic, on entrepreneurship. It's called If Nobody Loves You, Create the Demand. Read that book.
That's right.
By Crap Detector. And then if I've just saved myself 2 hours of conversation or an hour and a half of basic information on someone with an invention or an idea. And if they don't read the book, they're not going to call me back. But if they read
That's
it,
right.
then you can drill down. So truthcentrism.com is basically, it's truth and then CENTRISM.com. And basically what I've done there is I've taken the whole concept of Afrocentrism and I have given a good definition for it, and then an even-handed critique of Afrocentrism. Then I've taken Eurocentrism, provided a good definition of Eurocentrism, and then an honest, even-handed critique of Eurocentrism. And then I've introduced something different that I've never heard of before. It's called truth centrism, where like in Afrocentrism, we stick with only that which is corroborated evidence. With Eurocentrism, we only stick with that which is corroborated evidence.
Yes.
And what happens is people will tend to go into fanciful things
Yes.
when they can just stick with, this 80%, let's say, that is factual. The evidence is there. It's and so why go into it? Kind of like, people were so advanced in the ancient Egyptian culture that they were flying airplanes around the pyramids. Okay, that gets into crazy stuff. Now I give a 70% discount on everything else that person says.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to just find out what's corroborated and then stop there. And then just say, okay, if you want to talk about something that could be possibly, let's roll up our sleeves, get a cup of coffee, and just enjoy talking about it. But realize that we are in another realm of discussion here. And so that's kind of the way I've approached all of this as much as possible. And this textbook here, we're now in over 500 school districts. Brooklyn alone has 1,000 schools.
Good for you.
And we just finished the Latin History 365, which is a
Fantastic.
similar size textbook.
Yeah, it's huge.
And we're developing the K through 8. And our desire is this is our love letter to the whole country, not just half the country.
Beautiful.
Because that's why we're very careful and selective about even the media we go on and talk about it, because the worst that can happen to this is have a politician on the right or the left hold this up and say, this is the answer to whatever, CRT, 1619, 1776, BLM, whatever the issue is. They say, whoever says this is the answer, the other half of the country says, well, there's some shade on that now. There must be something wrong if that person is endorsing it. So
that's true.
Been under the radar screen, so to speak, over the last 4.5 years, and amazing things, providential things have happened.
Providential. Well, that's God's way.
We have Smokey Robinson, Kathy Hughes, and just Ben Watson from Super Bowl fame, and all kinds of different individuals. We have Ben Crump, who many could consider on the left. We have Alveda King, many consider on the right. We hope that becomes a metaphor for how the classroom can come together and work together.
Well, this is precisely how we got here, right? So divided, so full of hatred. We've been in never-ending wars for 100 years because people don't know what the truth is, right? It's been subverted in every respect from kindergarten onwards. And if we were able to confront and know the truth, and what I really respect about your books and what you just showed, you've got QR codes to citations. So it's not like you're just making this up. Here is the basis upon which I'm forming this opinion. And I think that's really important. It's why we actually have trials, right? It's to find out what the truth is. And what you're talking about effectively is a mock trial, right? People are coming and presenting their evidence and getting to it. But I really want to go back to one question that bothers me in my head, and maybe you can answer this. So we look at the impossibility of the engineering, whether that was the Olmec or other ancient societies, the Egyptians, and we see how it is that they built things we cannot build today. Where in the timeline, and you made mention of 15 something or other with the guy from Angola, where in the timeline did this all shift, where the facts were so burdensome that they got put away, that the control paradigm became more important than facts? Do you have a sense of that? And how do we recover that? How do we get back to gain that knowledge again?
Well, I think that what has happened is, and if someone goes to truthcentrism.com, I talk about, even Darwin and go even prior to him, the Great Chain of Being, where you had God and the angels in the first 5 or 6 categories or layers. And then you have the king and all these people. And then you have white men. And then two levels below, you have black people. And anyone in a lower level is subservient or serves the levels above them in order to keep chaos out of society, according to the British thought. And so I think what has happened is when you have a schema, a system set up like that, it's going to be, whoever's the victor tells the story.
That's right.
And so, and then the sun never set on the British Empire. And I'm just
still hasn't.
4 or 5 centuries here.
Yes.
Then what happens is the narrative, in my collection, I have over 100 genuine acts of parliament from 1689 to 1870 that detail the steps that were taken, the business-like steps were taken to control the slave trade. Because you had the Arabs, the Arab slave trade, is like 13, 14 centuries old. And and then and then the Portuguese saw what was happening on the Swahili coast off Kenya, and they said, "Man, we could do this, make money."
There's money.
And then you have other nations getting involved, and the British, they looked at it and they go, "Okay, we're going to control this, the triangular slave trade." And so then the narrative, gets, the sun never set on the empire, and so the narrative gets cast, and it gets inculcated into the textbooks, learning, or the interpretation of an event or something like that. And even in the lost cause of the South, you have the daughters, United Daughters of the Revolution, or of the
Confederacy.
They ended up putting up the bulk of the statues that we have around the country, and also they changed the narrative of the textbooks in schools, and we write all about that in the
fascinating. It was the Daughters of the Confederacy that shaped perception after the Civil War. Did not know that. Wow.
Whole section on this that is astonishing.
I mean, and this is the part that I think is really attractive about today, is that you and I are having this conversation. There are going to be many thousands of people that watch this. It's uncensored, it's unbridled, and people are going to confront the truths that you're talking about. And I think that's a good thing, that we can't make good decisions without the truth. That's just the reality of the situations. We've made hundreds of years of really bad choices that landed us here. But thanks to this technology, it's no longer shaped, right? All we've come to find now with the unmasking of USAID, exactly how much the CIA, for example, has controlled our media. I would also suggest to you that people should look at the oaths of office of every Commonwealth country, where the prime ministers, in their oath, make nothing other than an oath of allegiance to the crown. The sun continues to never set on the British Empire. The Commonwealth countries are still colonies. They always have been. But people were lied to and made to believe that this is the case, made to believe that the false paradigm of choice, left versus right, red versus blue, gave them some control. It's all a fiction. At the end of the day, they who control the money control everything, including the narrative.
And to your point, France has first rights in the neocolonialism, the first rights on mineral rights and everything else on the 14 Francophone countries. And it is a terrible, terrible thing. They could not, wasn't for what they're still getting from most African countries. It's terrible.
I've seen it personally in the Congo, and there's perpetual, never-ending wars. And they like that, because so long as there is chaos, they prevail. In fact, the owners, as I call them, their credo is Ordo ab Cal. And so we continue to buy into this, and then up to this point in time, people, it was more comfortable for them to go with what it is they knew, to go with the cultural norms rather than confront the truth of the matter. So I love what it is you're doing. I love the truth, and I think that it's God's gift to us, to be frank, and it is our best weapon against Satan and the evil that permeates our society. And I love the story also, by the way, of counseling to young athletes. There's a certain paradigm there that must be very difficult, because it takes absolute excellence to rise to the level of becoming a professional athlete. Excellence in that craft, but not necessarily excellence in every other part of their life. So it creates a huge gulf. And I've had clients as a lawyer, that would fit that paradigm. It's really tough. It's really tough to get to them sometimes. But you were somehow successful with this. And I'm just curious, how did you bridge that gap?
To this day, people ask that question. I don't know how. I survived 6 coaching changes, 3 GM changes, which is the biggest miracle of all. I still don't understand how that happened. But I think a lot of it was I wasn't there to take, I was there to give. So
Yeah.
I never asked for money. If we went out to play golf or go to lunch or something like that, even when I was I didn't have much money at that time as a
Sure.
young man, but I would still genuinely offer to pay regardless of whatever it was, and it was there to serve because
Yeah.
as I said before, their position in life attracts a lot of insincere people.
Yes, it
And
does.
I know of one story where an athlete, I won't mention his name, but he was talking to an old friend of his, a chaplain up in the New York area. And they were out to lunch. He had come into town, this athlete. If I said his name, you'd know it. Came into town. They were over dinner. And then the athlete, then they were just talking about the weather and sports, whatever it was, politics, whatever it was. And then he looked at him real intently over the table and he says, "What do you want from me?"
Yeah,
This
good
is
question.
9 years of friendship going
What do you
up
want?
all around together. What do you want from me? And my friend looked at him and says, "What do you mean, what do I want from you?" He says, "What do you want from me?" And so my friend kind of leaned back and thought for a moment. And he said, "Well, I understand the question, but I'm pissed off that you are asking me that question."
Wow.
He said, because I just thought we had an understanding of each other, that I want nothing from you. I thought that was clear. And so anyway,
Wow.
they had it out. It takes sometimes, 6, 7, 8, 9 years for an athlete to understand what the true motivations are of a person that's trying to get close to them, or anyone of notoriety, fame, or anything like that. So I think something to get back to the core of your question is that the worst people that is just, this is anecdotal. I have no hard evidence on this, but most every athlete I've talked with and have asked them, who are the biggest challenges? Of course, it's family, close friends, and then pastors are the worst because they're looking for
Betrayal.
money. They're looking for, a pastor could say, "Well, so-and-so came to my church this past Sunday."
Yeah.
Something like that. Or they come to my church. They're part of my congregation. All that stuff, I'll tell you, the athletes can see right through that.
I bet.
And so it's just, those are the kinds of things. I'm not cynical, but I've had a long glimpse behind the curtain of sports and athletes and people that are in that realm. And the thing is that what motivated me to continue, because there were times I wanted to quit, because I tell young
I'm sure.
nowadays, I say the first year you're going to be in awe. There's nothing you can do. You can't go to a seminar to learn this. You can't read it in a book. You can't have me even tell you about it. You got to experience it, and you got to go through the fire. First year, you're going to be in awe. Oh, there's Michael Jordan, or there's whoever it is that happens to be there, and the athletes have a special antennas on their heads. They can sense it, and they kind of shift the way they approach. They size you up in a millisecond.
Sure.
And then give you what they think they want to give you. And so what happens is, and it's all a part coping mechanism. It's understandable. And so what happens is that the first year in awe, it'll affect the ability to minister, to connect with the athletes. They'll sense it. It'll be awkward. You got to work through it. Keep on showing up. The second year, toward the end of the second year, beginning of the third year, you're going to develop a bad attitude, because everything I did was I donated my time. I volunteered. There's no pay involved, nothing. In fact, if anything, it took a lot from me, to do this.
Undoubtedly, that's true.
And so what happened is around this end of the second, beginning of the third year, you start, you show up. No one shows up at pregame chapel. And you're thinking, what the heck am I doing this for? It takes me 45 minutes to get here, 45 minutes to get home. All this stuff. I didn't have tickets for the first 7 seasons, to put it this way, because I was one of the first chaplains. They didn't know how to deal with me.
Wow.
And so I just became friends with the people parking, and they'd let me, "Oh, Chappie," or Rev, or whatever they called me, Joel, you can go in, because I was coming early. And then the guy at the door where the athletes come in, that doorway. We became friends,
Yeah.
and he let me in without a pass, without anything. And then I would just sit, and if I sat in a seat during the game, then someone said, "That's my seat." "Oh, I'm sorry," and I'd move over a few seats if necessary. That's the way I coped during that period.
Wow.
But anyway, it's just, I guess, to get to your question, it's just loving them without any strings
Beautiful.
attached, and just
Unconditional.
unvarnished, be honest, and be a person of integrity, and never ask for anything from them, and just be there. And that's
be a resource.
Be square with them on everything. That there's no moving target here.
Well, I really admire that. Also, the tenacity. So it sounds to me like it's year 4 or 5 before you actually earned that trust. That's a lot of dedication.
By 4 year, things even out, and that's when the real work, real ministry begins to happen after 4 years.
God bless you, brother. I mean, because people need that. What you're talking about is authenticity. Really, at the end of the day, is that you are who it is you say you are, and it takes that long to demonstrate it. And I understand it. I fully get that. Everybody's after something, and they don't believe that you're there, right? It took that long of not asking for something for them to finally believe you. I get that. As a matter of fact, my little pro bono law firm, we're in year 5 of giving away legal services, to the masses. And it's only now people are feeling, oh, okay, I guess they're serious. So anyway, John, with that said, come back in, and I'm sure you got questions already. And it's such an honor to hear you say these things.
Yeah, hold a little to the left.
Yeah, we got to see it better. There we go.
Oh.
Put it right in front of you.
The Rosetta Stone project.
The Rosetta Stone. That's the one I want. I want to understand the Rosetta Stone. I really do. I've seen a documentary about it, but now I don't know if it's true. So I got to buy your book.
So, we did a title about Jack Johnson, so we should ask you a few questions about that book as well.
Okay.
Well, can you tell us a little bit about that book and your history with that?
Yeah. What happened is that in my collection, and I'm going to show it to you, I have a record here, and this, I'm trying to get it so it doesn't reflect too much, but this record is 115 years old, and it's the only one in the world. In 1910, Jack Johnson, who is this character, this gentleman right here on the cover, Jack Johnson fought the fight of the century, and it was in fact, 1910. You think you're only a decade into a century, and you call it the fight of the century. That's how big it was, and it has endured since then to be that. And so, what happened is that Jack was beating up all the known challengers at that time around the world. He became the world champion in 1908 in Australia, Sydney, Australia. And then is Tommy Burns he fought, and he was a master. His defensive mastery was that he would catch, they would punch, and he just catch it like he was catching a ball. And he came through all his years. I think it was 94 fights in all, or something like that. They're recorded, many other fights beyond that, without any scars on his face. Like Muhammad Ali said, "I'm pretty," and that's what happened with him. So, and he was an incredible individual. There were some downsides to him in terms of womanizing and things like that. But when you look at his whole life total, is that he ended up becoming a spy at one point. He owned an advertising firm in Barcelona, Spain, at one point.
I think his internet just went out.
I was going to say, there goes the electricity. I gotta confess, I don't want this to end. I am so fascinated by what Joel is saying. And he said 20-something books, John. I really want to know about. I really want to know about the Rosetta Stone. I keep asking him the question because I want to understand. This ancient philosophy, these impossible acts that these people were able to accomplish, and yet we don't know how they did it. I want to find that Rosetta Stone to figure out where this all came from. I hope Joel gets to come back. But this is, I have to admit, one of my favorite interviews to understand what it is he's saying and find, what it is, that common denominator we share, which is, at the end of the day, the truth.
Yeah.
I think that's really it. I'm interested in your thoughts, though.
Well, I think I was really interested in how he dealt with, these players who, my guess is they probably come from mostly modest backgrounds.
Sure.
And then suddenly they're thrust in the spotlight, and there's money and there's women. I went to drinks with Charles Barkley in 2002 and was astounded by just the type of, women
yes,
that would just position themselves around these guys.
Yeah.
And, with that sort of temptation or whatever you want to call it, it must be incredibly difficult to navigate genuine people versus vultures, really.
Well, wasn't it Magic Johnson said that he had bedded 10,000 women? I mean, it was why he ended up.
Sounds about right. And it was also Wilt Chamberlain too, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I understand the temptation. I think that's got to be one of the hardest parts about being a human anyway.
Sure.
Is that we seem to have this insatiability. We're always looking for something bigger and better. Maybe that's, put into our genetic code. But I have to tell you, when I'm happy, I'm not looking to get anywhere else. I'm here. And if we could somehow, impart that, people aren't different really at the end of the day. We're all very much the same, but we're really affected by what it is we're hearing. And when you take into account the fact is that most of what it is we've heard for our whole lives was wrong, it was a lie. Imagine the process we've got to go through to now understand what the truth is. And that's why I wanted to get back to these ancient guys, because there's truth there that we don't know. And I think that can guide us on what it is we're going to do going forward.
Yeah, and that if he doesn't come back, it's a nice segue to where we started, which was CBS revising history. And history has just been revised over and over and over again. Every generation invents a new history to make it feel better about its current situation.
Well, isn't that the truth? And I'm sorry, maybe this is our opportunity to get to the memes that Virginia sent to us today.
He's back.
Oh, good.
So let me let him get situated there.
There we go.
Hey,
Joel,
there we go.
Welcome back. We only got a couple of minutes left. So, John, go ahead.
Well, Joel, no, I just thought it was fascinating. We were kind of going through what you just were talking about. And I was saying I'd gone to drinks with Charles Barkley back in 2002, I think. And, I was astounded by the type of attention that he was getting, not just from the average person, but women who almost seemed like their job was to be there to entice them. And that must be incredibly difficult for these players who probably came from relatively modest backgrounds to suddenly be thrust in the limelight with money and fame and, women and all the attention that comes with that. It must have made your job incredibly difficult, or at least challenging.
I got there early, so I could see a certain section. I knew where the girls were sitting. And sometimes you weren't sure if they were a girl or not. And so
well, you'll find out.
Check the package. Rule number 1: check the package.
Check the neck. Check the Adam's apple.
Good.
Anyway, that was quite an interesting situation. A lot of people, their position in life. I would tell them at the beginning of every season, I don't envy you at all. But you have the grace for dealing with it, and. Even with both of you, someone might say, well, I can't do what you do. Well, you have the grace to do it. And that's what very few people make it to that position.
Yeah, to be blessed. And I think that's part of this whole thing too, is that if you can ground yourself in God, that gave rise to all of us, there's a higher power. Right. And I think where we get ourselves into a lot of trouble is when we either look at ourselves, as gods, or we look to men to solve all of our problems. And I think that's the spirituality that all of us have to have in our own way, or otherwise we miss the plot.
Do we have about 4 minutes for this?
Yeah, fire away. Do it quick.
Do we have time? Okay. First of all, I'm the only one in the world that's created a full-size 3D replica of the Rosetta Stone that was used to crack the code to hieroglyphics.
Yes.
One was used in the movie Night at the Museum Part 3 on the movie set. And they're in museums all around the world. And what happened was about, I'd say 2005, I acquired a face of the Rosetta Stone, created a mold. And then as I've seen technology advance, you know, we had the Industrial Revolution that changed the skylines of the world, cities of the world, changed transportation. Now we have a triple revolution, which is AI. We have quantum computing and spatial computing. Any one of those three is a game changer. And so I just see so many people with their arms up over their head saying, "Oh, I don't how are we going to deal with AI?" I think we need to have some kind of a proactive response to it. And so what I'm developing is a 5,000 square foot traveling exhibit that tells the dramatic story of the Rosetta Stone that was unearthed in 1799 on the west bank of the Nile. And when they read it, it's in three inscriptions. Let's see here. So we have here's a thing at the top is hieroglyphics. They didn't know if it was alphabetic, phonetic, read right to left, left to right, symbolic. They didn't know anything. In the middle is a demotic script. We get the word democracy, comes from the Greek word demos, and that's the common people, just like the Latin Vulgate, the vulgar common people use this, but it's a cursive form, a hieratic form of hieroglyphics. And then the bottom Greek, because it was conquered by Alexander the Great. The very bottom, the last sentence, it says, the same thing will be inscribed in all three inscriptions. They knew the same thing they were reading in the Greek, which they read, was in all three inscriptions. So they thought, oh, this is going to be easy peasy lemon squeezy. You know, we can just figure this out. And it ended up taking 1799 to 1822, 23 years to crack the code. And you have all kinds of, like, it became like an international treasure hunt trying to figure out what this is all about. So I began to think, what if we transform this ancient artifact into a modern metaphor for problem solving? So I came up with the letters in Rosetta, where you have the R-O, 7 letters, an acronym. The R, first got to recognize the type of problem it is, the intensity of the problem, the emotional intelligence, even approaching the problem with someone else. And then the O, obtain information. The S, set your goals. Do you want to become famous or rich by solving this problem? What are your goals? Because if you have a why, you can handle every what, who, when, where, how, and all the rest of it come against it. So we're developing a 5,000 square foot traveling exhibit, travel all around North America. Once the template is done, for 7 years, it'll be traveling, 5 months at each venue, science centers, museums. And then once the template is done, we'll create 2 more for China, 1 for Southeast Asia, 1 for Europe, and another one will travel to other cities that aren't serviced by the other orbits, like London, like Moscow, Tel Aviv, Rio de Janeiro, Sydney, places like that. At the end of 7 years, under my nonprofit, we're going to be donating these to different parts of the world. The first one's going to Barbados, and then the citizens of that country will have a museum that already people know about. And so people who visit will want to go see this. It'll help with tourism, help with jobs. And then there will be a citizen-led group of people called a Solutionist Institute, where people will use these 7 steps for problem solving. They will identify the top 25 problems of that region of the world and then go about solving them. And so right now, using this Jack Johnson booklet, I figure if 1 million people will donate $10 to hear Jack Johnson's voice speak about the 15th round of the fight of the century, the only one in the world. And then number 2, I have a blues song, because I write blues music. Blues is one of my favorite genres of music. And so we have a blues song. And then thirdly, I've developed a 10-point war strategy that Jack used to prepare for this fight and then to win the fight. And so all of that for $10, and we're go to jackjohnsonspeaks.com and learn all about it. And then every penny goes to the foundation. And we're hoping, once again, 1 million people will donate $10 to this.
Oh, that's beautiful. And I would say, by the way, I like your choice of Barbados. They're extraordinarily pragmatic people. That's where my head office is. And so I love working with Bajans. They're smart and pragmatic. I think that's really cool. And you can go see the Concorde. Sorry?
We usually spend a month every year there in Barbados.
It's such a lovely place. I love Barbados. And you can see the Concord is what I was trying to say. So with all of that, what a joy this is for me, Joel. I think we could go on seriously for hours, and I want to do that with you at some point because there's so much to come back to. And I really wanted to ask you how Cleopatra fit into the Rosetta Stone. I think she was the key at the end of the day, if I remember correctly. But there's so much to understand here. And we can get our books where? Tell us where to get your stuff. You gave us one website.
Well, if you just go to jackjohnsonspeaks.com, that probably is a way to get a hold of me there, my cell number and everything.
Wow.
And then the landing page, it'll take people to, that they can get a hold of me.
Very good. And so you're available to help people. I know you got your own project, but people are going to wonder, how do they get a hold of you for whatever kind of help? So I don't know how you do that. But I'll tell you what, we'll put it in the show notes if you're open to people contacting you. Make sure that your website's there.
My website is joelspeaksrealgood.com. joelspeaksrealgood.com.
I love that. I love
There it is.
All right. Well, what a joy. Joel, thanks for being here. John, as always, to you and the CloutHUB and Vaxxchoice family, thank you for putting this together. God bless you both. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week.
Thank you very much.
Have a good one.
My honor.